Welcome to Filoli, 654 acres of historic beauty nestled along the slopes of California's coastal range. It was here in 1915 that one of the richest men in California decided to build the country estate of his dreams. In the midst of building that estate, William Bowers Bourn II prophesied that Filoli might be interesting a few hundred years from now. And more than a century later, attracting visitors from all over the world, Filoli is well on its way to proving Bourn right. Today, Filoli is considered one of the finest remaining country estates of the early 20th century. As you explore the 56-room Georgian-style mansion with its 16 acres of formal English gardens during your visit today, you may like to know a little about the two families that once lived here. William Bourn II grew up on San Francisco's Nob Hill and then attended university at Cambridge, where he developed a love for all things English, old world architecture, stately country manners, and the landed gentry lifestyle.
Bourne's time at Cambridge was beloved, and he spent every chance he could when he wasn't in study or in tests, walking the countryside and exploring sights, and fell in love with England.
But Bourn didn't get to finish his studies abroad. In 1878, the year he would have graduated, Bourn received an urgent letter from home. His late father's Empire gold mine in Grass Valley, it seemed, had bottomed out at 1,200 feet. Engineers and bank officials were advising his mother Sarah to shut the mine down.
William just ignored these professional mining engineers and just kept digging and digging. And sure enough, he found the vein, which is another example of the Bourn luck. His father had it, and he had it too.
So young Bourn's gamble paid off. It was 1883 when miners struck the even richer vein of gold at the 1,700-foot level. During this time, Bourn married Agnes Moody of New York and started his own family. In 1896, the couple hired up-and-coming architect Willis Polk to build a lavish 28-room English manor-style home in San Francisco's Pacific Heights. For years, the Bourns split their time between that house and a summer home near the Empire Mine. The Empire Cottage, also designed by Polk, was built of quartz waste rock from the mine. By 1905, Bourn had merged multiple San Francisco gas and electric utilities to form the Pacific Gas and Electric Company, an extremely profitable venture for him and his shareholders. He later headed up another lucrative utility, the Spring Valley Water Company, which supplied San Francisco with water from the Crystal Springs Reservoir. The Great Quake of 1906 and its subsequent fires devastated central San Francisco, leading many families to flee the city. Rather than rebuild homes in San Francisco, many wealthy families built grand showcase mansions on the peninsula. Even though their home wasn't damaged by the quake, the Bourns, too, began to dream of building a country estate where they could enjoy their retirement. My idea, Bourn wrote in a letter to a friend, is to devote the afterglow of my life. This is the next 40 or 50 years or so, in personal supervision of its development. There, I hope to grow young. Bourn knew exactly where he wanted to build his next home, overlooking the Crystal Springs Reservoir. The landscape and the view of the lakes reminded William and Agnes of Muckross, a beautiful country estate in Ireland that they had purchased as a wedding gift for their daughter Maud. It took Bourn years to buy the land around Crystal Springs, but in 1915, ground was officially broken at Filoli. Where Bourn came up with the unusual name for his estate would remain a mystery to many for years.
Initially, no one knew where Bourn took the name Filoli from. Was it an Italian word or a foreign language? But where he ultimately took it from was tied to his personal motto: to fight for a just cause, to love your fellow man, and live a good life. And if you know where to look, he left quite a few clues here and there around the property.
To design Filoli, the Bourns once again hired their friend Willis Polk. The architect presented William and Agnes with 19 different drawings. One of these quite closely resembles what was eventually built. Polk combined the traditional English styles of the Georgian and Stuart periods to create a Georgian revival-style English country house with 56 main rooms laid out in a U-shaped design. Construction began in 1915 and took 2 years and more than $425,000 to complete. The house and gardens are meticulously aligned to one another and to the natural landscape. While Polk was in charge of the house, Bourn hired artist, designer, and all-around Renaissance man Bruce Porter to design the gardens.
The garden is made up of 2 different garden styles. Near the house is the Georgian style, which takes advantage of the views to the west and to the north. And then to the south of the house is the English Renaissance style, which is more of a formal, intricate pattern of garden rooms.
More than a mile of hedges function as walls to separate the garden into rooms. The sunken garden, for example, acts as the living room, the focal point of the garden where people would gather to admire the most beautiful flowers, such as the annual tulip display. The Bourns moved into Filoli in 1917, even though finishing touches were still underway. They continued to work with Porter, floral designer Isabella Warren, and architect Arthur Brown Jr. to develop the gardens. The years that followed World War I marked a period of celebration for the family. The Bourns threw elaborate garden parties and elegant dinners to entertain family and friends, and even hosted musical performances and high-stakes poker games. But in 1921, Bourne's dream of growing young at Filoli was crushed. While away on business at the Empire Mine, Bourne suffered the first of several devastating strokes, which would leave him paralyzed and unable to speak.
For such a powerful figure, someone who was used to ruling not only his own life, but a boardroom and being a very forceful figure, I think it was very hard for him to find himself in what he considered a weakened state, unable to directly communicate with people.
With Bourne ailing, his family looked for happy distractions at Filoli to cheer him up. The walls of the Filoli ballroom had been left white for years. In 1924, the Bourns sent prominent artist Ernest Peixoto to Ireland to sketch their beloved muckross so that he could reproduce it on the ballroom walls. Agnes and daughter Maud, who visited regularly from Muckross, worked closely with Peixoto for 3 years on the project. Maud even traveled to Paris with the artist to choose new lighting fixtures, drapery fabric, and a mantel for the fireplace.
The ballroom was their chance to bring Muckross closer to California when William was no longer able to travel.
Peixoto painted the canvases in New York. They were then rolled and transported by train to Filoli, where they were installed in 1927. Agnes chose her favorite color, a pale, watery green for the walls, and Peixoto painted the images of Muckross in a similar palette to match. In 1929, Bourne suffered another serious stroke. Fearing her father may not survive, Maud risked a winter crossing of the Atlantic to see him one last time. Tragically, it was Maud who did not survive the long journey on the ocean liner.
On the liner, she fell ill. She had pneumonia and she died. She was traveling with her 2 children, Billy Vincent, who was only 9 at the time, and her daughter, Rosie, my grandmother, who was 14. With maids and governesses and so on and so forth. But the children had to then travel with their mother from New York, with the mother in a coffin in the next car on the train via Chicago to San Francisco, which was a traumatic event for them as well. So Bourne was hoping to receive his daughter, and he didn't. He received her body, and of course she's buried here at Filoli.
Bourne never truly recovered from his daughter's death. While he would live for several more years, he was greatly diminished, both physically and emotionally. The Bourns, however, did throw one last big party at Filoli. In 1933, Bourne's sister Ida helped organize an event to celebrate the end of Prohibition. They called it the Drunks' Dinner.
The Drunks' Dinner was a fantastic party, very much in William's spirit and sense of humor. And so although both Agnes and William were bedbound at that point and unable to come downstairs, it's said that they loved to hear laughter and everyone having a good time as it drifted up the stairs.
Bourne even commissioned poems and comical favors created and written in honor of each guest. As they roasted each other aloud, they did their best to empty their host's extensive wine cellar. 3 years later, Agnes Bourn succumbed to pneumonia and died at Filoli. She was 75. William Bourn died just 6 months later of heart failure at age 79. The Bourns are buried with their children and later generations on a private knoll overlooking Filoli. The spirit of Filoli would live on through the second family to live here. In 1937, Lurleen Matson Roth and her husband William purchased Filoli as a family home for themselves and their 3 teenage children. It was the final years of America's Great Depression, and many other lavish estates had been abandoned or demolished during the previous decade.
The Roths bought Filoli during the Depression, and we can thank the people in the community who encouraged them to buy it when they were one of the few families who could afford to.
For the next 40 years, the Roths ensured that Filoli's grandeur would not only be protected, but enhanced. The family's wealth came largely from Lurleen's father, a prosperous shipping and oil magnate and founder of the Matson Navigation Company. Lurleen's daughter, also named Lurleen, tells of her grandfather's humble beginnings.
My grandfather's name was Captain William Matson, and he was born in Sweden and orphaned when he was only 3, but his love became the sea, and he spent much of his time watching the ships as they came and went from his native shore. And at the age of 11, he ran away from home as a handy boy and sailed to New York and eventually around the Horn to San Francisco.
Shortly after, Lurleen and William Roth married in 1914. Roth began working for his father-in-law and would eventually take over the Matson Navigation Company. Meanwhile, the young couple started a family. Young Bill was born in 1916, and identical twins Lurleen and Brennis came along in 1920. The family lived in San Francisco's Pacific Heights neighborhood and spent their summers at a country estate they called the Why Worry Farm in Woodside, where Lurleen bred prize-winning thoroughbreds and hackney ponies. When the family moved to Filoli in 1937, Lurleen brought many of her horses with her. Stretches of the green-painted fencing and horse troughs still remain on the property today. In the gardens and in the house, the Roths retained many of the Bourns' original designs and treatments. They purchased Filoli fully furnished, so many of the Bourn-era masterpieces remain on display today. Of course, the Roths added many of their own heirlooms and personal touches as well. The Bourns built Filoli to host elaborate parties, and the Roths continue the tradition in style. One of the most memorable Roth parties was the debutante ball thrown for the twins, Lurleen and Brennis, in 1939.
It was as if Filoli had been transformed into a fairyland. The entire house was decorated, and in the garden there were lights everywhere. And then the doors were opened into the ballroom, and we had Ernie Heckscher. He was the great band leader of the time. I think the party went to almost 6 in the morning. And it just never stopped. The dancing never stopped.
Dressed in matching silver gowns and white gloves, the twins, who dressed alike every day until they were married, greeted more than 1,000 guests. The local papers described the event as having launched the girls into society like luxury liners.
We looked so much alike. No one could tell us apart. My parents gave us beautiful little diamond pins with our name on. And sometimes we would have fun and exchange the pins back and forth. And they never found out that we were exchanging.
Maintaining the Filoli house and gardens took a sizable workforce. About 30 employees lived and worked at Filoli in the 30s and 40s. The staff, many of whom lived in the house for decades, were like family.
It was like upstairs, downstairs. If you've ever seen the movie, that's exactly the way. And we couldn't wait for our parents to go out for dinner because we'd all go up in the helps room and play poker, penny poker with all the help, and coffee. They'd smoke cigarettes. You could hardly see the cards, but we loved it. It was a great experience. We loved them. We loved them like a family.
While Lurleen Coonan's mother, Lurleen, certainly loved the house, it was Filoli's gardens that charmed her most. She was an avid gardener and spent countless hours ordering seeds, adding new plants, and keeping records of everything she planted. Like the Bourns, she often worked with Bella Warren on larger projects. The two spent much time in the Woodlands garden, where they added dozens of rhododendrons, dogwoods, and other shade-loving plants like Lurleen's beloved camellias.
Mrs. Roth was crazy about camellias, and her head gardener had told her there was no more room to plant anymore. So she waited until he went on vacation one year and bought up a bunch and planted them throughout the wall garden.
In 1943, William Roth suffered the first of a series of small strokes. Bella and Lurleen worked together on a design to artfully bring a swimming pool into the gardens for Roth's rehabilitation. The pool, located on the far side of the sunken garden, quickly became a favorite summer gathering spot for the family. Lurleen's tireless dedication to the gardens made Filoli known worldwide. In 1973, she was awarded the Distinguished Service Medal of the Garden Club of America for her achievements as a collector. Her tradition of filling the house with arrangements of flowers from the gardens and greenhouses continues to this day. The gardens at Filoli, lovingly maintained, are among the best surviving examples of the English Renaissance-style garden. William Roth passed away in 1963 at the age of 83. With her husband gone and her children grown, Lurleen found Filoli to be too lonely and too large to manage on her own. She initially decided to sell the estate, but when the potential buyers said that they wouldn't allow public tours of the gardens, Lurleen changed her mind.
My mother stayed awake one night. Finally, she called my brother and she said, "I'm not selling it." She said, "You're going to have to find a way that we can preserve Filoli and open it to the public."
He did find a way, and in 1975, the Roths donated Filoli to the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Lurleen also gave a generous endowment to help offset the costs of maintaining the property and keeping it open to the public. Roth family members continued to be involved with Filoli, volunteering and often sitting on Filoli's governing board.
Filoli is a shining example of a 20th century country estate, and it is so rich in history, so rich in California history and its natural resources. It was important for my family to preserve it. We consider everyone that works at Filoli and visits Filoli as part of that family.
It takes more than 60 staff members and nearly 1,200 volunteers, known as the Friends of Filoli, to keep the estate, the gardens, and all of the Filoli events going. Over the years, millions of people have visited the estate. Some walk the house and gardens, some hike the nature preserve trails, some take classes, and some attend special events like the annual flower show, afternoon teas, jazz concerts, and the holiday traditions celebration. Classes offered at Filoli cover subjects such as plein air painting, horticulture, nature education, floral design, botanical arts, and cooking. Each year, thousands of students on school field trips and other guests on special docent-led hikes explore the nature preserve through Filoli's nature education program.
We want to continue to preserve Filoli and expose children and adults to a very special environment that they may not have the opportunity to enjoy, to take a hike, to be outside, to see a garden grow, all those things that are getting harder and harder to experience in our busy world.
Indeed. In today's fast-paced world, Filoli can offer a respite, a brush with nature, and a glimpse into history and the people who once lived here.
I would like to thank all the visitors that come to Filoli, and I hope that as you tour the house and garden, you will carry some of my stories with you to allow Filoli to live again and to be remembered as a beautiful family home.